And he gathers a lot of African knowledge. He gathers a lot of African histories and African facts. That people that, if I say Ibn Khaldun, you might know about it. But if I say Hegel, you're definitely going to know about it because he has been mostly promoted, mostly be subject for vast propaganda. But that Hegel guy is just a scholar, like a student of this Ibn Khaldun that I'm talking about. So then you can just have an idea of how big, of how important that guy was in terms of history, in terms of African knowledge. So most of these information that we have about the empire, they're just provided by those three thinkers, by those three philosophers. This African empire has often been presented as a philosophical proof, as a physical proof, pardon me, of African ingenuity in political, administrative, social, and religious structuring. So I don't need to just copy the Western way of thinking, the Western way of conceiving democracy. I don't need that. What I need is to just go back to these things, to learn about it, and then to know that from within me, I can do whatever I want. I can unite. We can unite the entire world because we done it. We did it in the past. It's not something that's very impossible. The Malian Empire extended, as I was saying earlier, from the Sahara Desert, because most of you have heard about the Sahara Desert, from the Sahara Desert to the Equatorial Forest, including the present-day Mali, Burkina Faso, Senegal, the country that I'm from, Gambia, the two Guinea, which is the Guinea-Bissau and the Guinea-Conakry, and Mauritania, and Ivory Coast. So all these countries was part of the Mali Empire. They just become countries with president, flag, and constitution and all of that just because these countries was victim of colonization. So they just got separated. But we didn't know separation. What we knew was unity because it's just showing here. All these countries was gathered in one and strong kingdom, which is the Malian Empire. So we never know about having our own state, our own head of state, our prime minister. We never know about that. That was not our idea. So it was imposed by us. So it is the confederation of states. The same way that you hear that the United States is the confederation of nations, the United States of America, which is like a bunch of nations that just gathered under one and single federal law and federal constitution. That's that same way that this Mali Empire that existed thousands of years before America has been confederate. So then you're like, where these people got their inspiration from? Where these people know the necessity of uniting themselves. They know it because they have studied. They know it because they have traveled to Africa. They know the importance of unity and how unity is going to allow you in this world to survive. Because without unity, survival is just going to be something that's not possible at all. So it is the confederation of states gathered by the will to unify the whole Western Africa around the same idea of liberty, brotherhood, and economic thriving. Its structuration goes from governors, like right now we have governors in the United States. Go to Europe, they have that same structure of the government. They have the president, they have the prime minister, and then the ministers or the head of department, as the United States knows it. And they have, in every local community, call it a state, they have the governor of the state. So the idea of having a governor, because these Malian people, they conceive the importance of going together and doing stuff. So it's not the king is just going to sit back and order people to do it. No, it's the people who just going to know what they need, what they want, and how they want it. And then they're just going to share that with the king and his allies. So it's going to be applied in that way. So that idea of governorship, that idea of having a prime minister, that idea of having a mayor, that idea of having like a representative of a community has been just known, has been just proved through history. So all of these things that we hear right now is nothing new to somebody who just know about African history, to somebody who just know about himself as an African. So those are the things that I really wanted to talk about the Mali Empire. And then the history of Mali highlights two major reasons, because the same way that I can is just going to be a betrayal to talk about Africa without the Mali Empire. That same way is going to be a betrayal for me to just talk about Mali without talking about Timbuktu. You might heard about it. And Timbuktu right now is just a city which is devastated by war, which is devastated by what you call poverty, which is devastated by just injustice. But Timbuktu used to be one of the biggest city in Africa. A city known by its geographical position, a city known by its economic strategical position in Africa, West Africa, and the rest of the continent, and a city mostly known by its as a capital of knowledge. The same way that you're going to talk about Egypt and talk about their library, talking about the knowledge stored there by the Pharaoh, is that same exact way you're going to talk about the city of Timbuktu with the big and just enormous knowledge that it has. And all those knowledge, they're nothing but brilliant sources, they're nothing but ideas, they're nothing but just sciences developed by our ancestors. So that's something just to think about. Libraries existed like 13 centuries. Libraries, like universities, we just heard about them recently. People talking about Harvard, talking about U of L, talking about like the biggest and boasting about it and just taking it as their own national treasure. But we had that like how many years ago? So we has to be imbued by self-sufficiency to just not envy nobody. Because whatever you might hear, whatever you just might create or you just might show to the world is just like an inspiration that you got from me, that you got from him, Dexter, that you got from whoever is African in this church. Apart from the Mali Empire, one other thing is to me of great importance to talk about, which is a brother, an ancestor, whose name is Marcus Garvey. And I want to talk about it just a little, like just a couple of minutes about him, because there is this idea that he developed. There's this idea that he found it, that I just find really of great importance. Because Marcus Garvey was all about in the Back to Africa movement. And Marcus Garvey wanted African Americans in here to go back to Africa. That's what Marcus Garvey wanted. And that's what I want. And not to go to Africa, just pack your stuff and go. No, that's not what I mean. What I mean is to go to Africa physically, if it's possible, or to go to Africa psychologically, if it's possible. Because there is a big